Our first option is putting an embargo act in place with Russia. Currently, the U.S. has embargoes with the following countries: Burma, Cuba, Iran, Libya, North Korea, Sudan, and Syria. By stopping trade with Russia, both countries won't be affected very much. Every year since 1992, the U.S. has only imported $35,000 worth of goods or less from Russia. Also, the U.S. has only deported $12,000 worth of goods or less to Russia. However, the U.S. would benefit some from putting an embargo act in place because it would reduce the risk of an attack, spies, and things like that. But overall, an embargo act with Russia is not the best option.
One option we have is diplomacy. This is a way we can deal with Ukraine and Russia. Diplomacy is a nonviolent solution to deal with the problem. Some of the pros of using diplomacy with Russia over the Ukraine are no fighting. This will save the U.S. money, also saving the lives of many troops that would have to go and fight. Also, this would take less time. Some of the cons are it's not as an aggressive approach and it may not do as well as a full-on war. This is also more complex and we would need to plan it out more.
So, what would happen if we took after President Madison and pursued war? Well, the United States military, in its entirety, is the second largest military in the world, second only to China. Even though it is smaller than the Chinese military, its active duty force is substantially larger than Russia's and is often considered the most powerful military in the world. One compares the United States' 1,369,532 active duty soldiers as of December 2013 to Russia's 766,000, of the United States' 850,880 reservists to Russia's 2,035,000 reservists, totaling with 2,220,412 U.S. total soldiers and 2,801,000 total Russian Federation soldiers. It appears that we are actually at a man disadvantage. This is the case. However, the actual effectiveness of the Russians' man advantage is negligible, as Russia is actually undergoing a military reform that mainly involves downsizing the military to 1 million men, as well as a considerably smaller amount of equipment. The Russians also, as I just said, have less and older equipment, and morale is also substantially lower amongst men due to brutal hazings that drafted men undergo. The side effect of this lowered morale, one would imagine, is a reduced will to fight and overall reduced effectiveness on the battlefield. In contrast to that, U.S. troops, while they may be less in number, have far superior and much more modern equipment, and while they do undergo hazings, they are far less likely to be dangerous and sometimes lethal like the Russian hazings, which in the end result, as well as the fact that all United States soldiers are volunteers, results with considerably higher morale, which in turn results with higher will to and ability to fight. So in the end, the United States soldiers are better equipped and overall just probably more skilled and, they have more ability, they have more will to fight, which is actually very important in a war. Also, as I just said, not only is it U.S. infantry equipment that is much more advanced than Russian infantry equipment, but the United States also has a sizable force of bleeding-edge helicopters, experimental jet fighters, and drones. U.S. aerial hardware is much more advanced than the mostly Cold War-era Air Force of Russia. The U.S. also has a much larger navy, excluding battleships and other small craft, with 10 current supercarriers, 9 amphibious assault craft, and 7 to 8 new carriers planned for construction in the coming years. When compared to Russia's single aircraft carrier, our troop transport and projection abilities are far superior. Our Air Force, like I mentioned earlier, is far more advanced and considerably larger in size. The Russian Air Force is composed of, primarily, Cold War-era helicopters and fighters, with modern vehicles making up a small portion. So in the end, the US and NATO combined powers could probably defeat Russia in a war. But, either way, war is not the best idea to pursue, especially while we are still involved in a long and bloody conflict in Afghanistan. In my mind, it makes no sense to run into a conflict with an enemy on par with you right after a very long fight with another. And, as with all wars, it will result with needless bloodshed and destruction of many innocent people's lives and property.
And so, as a group, we decided that diplomacy would be the best option.